everybody. I'm Victor Brooks, and this is the Victor Brooks Show, Facebook Live Quarantine Series. And as you know, it's Sunday, because every Saturday and Sunday we come at you at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, or just sometimes 1 o'clock, or just sometimes 3 o'clock. It depends on how the scheduling goes, you know. But each time we come on with you, our mission is to bring you positivity to the screen through our positivity posse. You know what I mean? And I see our positivity posse. As soon as you see this, I'm clicking my start party here as well, so that I can join in and connect others too, and start yours if you have a moment to do that with us. Click your start party and bring in the rest of our positivity posse around the world. And as you know, we always like to remind that, you know, we know it's heavy out there, y'all. It's nothing that we can't run from it if we try. You know, we can't say that there's nothing going on that's affecting our life every single day. You know, starting just a few months ago with the coronavirus, you know, the first virus that I'm going to mention today, you know, that coronavirus kind of put everybody on pause for a minute, and still on pause. It made us pull back to kind of maybe think about some things in our life, you know, to make those calls to people we haven't talked to in a while, to start those projects we haven't started in a while, you know, and I always want to give thanks to our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, you know, the people right there on the front line, our EMT workers, our positive law enforcement officials that are there. You know, there are some positives out there, and we have to give credit where credit is due. I want to thank our truck drivers. You know, I want to thank our supermarket workers. When we go to the store, they're there to help us. Our sanitation workers, everybody who's trying to make our days as comfortable as they can be during this virus. And it's undeniable. We have our second virus that's generational. You know, it's been with us for generations, unfortunately, and that virus is racism. And we see how prevalent it is even today in 2020, you know. My hope and my positivity during the second virus is, number one, I'm so proud of our young people. I'm so proud of our protesters out there who actually led the way in this protest, you know, this movement, this voice, our young people. And even though we started seeing the young people here in the US on our media, soon we started to realize that these were young people from around the world who were gathering to lift their voices, to call and scream and cry for a change, you know. It makes me so proud. Keep doing what you're doing. And my generation and older, continue to leave that gate of communication open, y'all. It's very important. Our young people not only need to be able to voice on the streets with their peers, but they also need to be able to come to us. And even my older generation, who passed the torch in many ways to my generation. And it's up to my generation to continue to leave that gate open, to say, come and talk to us, you know? And hey, we'd be surprised. We can learn a lot from this generation as well. And our prayer is that they allow us to pass on that wisdom to them. Keep it going, and especially our young artists. Write those songs, you know, paint those paintings, take those pictures, develop that form of artistic expression that only an artist can do. You know, our mission as artists is to relay those feelings, those emotions that pretty much are shared by everyone else as well. But it takes an artist a lot of times, and many times, to create that interpretation of emotion that so many are feeling. Art is important, y'all. Much love and much respect to you all. Also, I'd like, from the heart, from all of the Brooks family, we'd like to give a show of respect to the whole entire C family from Memphis, Tennessee. The passing of George Russell C. Jr. It's heavy with so many of us, especially here at the Brooks family, because how much the C family means to us. our times at Longview Heights Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then in Memphis, Tennessee. Those were special moments, foundational moments for myself as a young Victor. And I know for my brother Chris and my sister Julie, and the connections and relationships with my mom and my dad and Mom, Pop C and the entire C family. Russell C was a big brother to myself and my brother and my sister. His guidance, his wisdom, his taking his time to do what I just mentioned, and that is to leave that gate open. We as young people growing up around Russell knew that his gate was open. We knew we could go and talk to him. We knew that there was a listening ear, you know, and sometimes a shoulder to cry on. And as a big brother to a lot of us, it's time to put a foot in our tail when we needed it as well. Much love and much respect to the legacy of Russell C. Today, y'all, is Father's Day. Father's Day, and happy Father's Day to all my fellow fathers out there. One of the privileges in my life is to be a father. My wife, Cheryl Center Brooks, the Queen blessed me with two kings, you know, our oldest, Victor Brooks III, and our youngest, Benjamin Jackson Brooks, two of my heroes. And as a father, it makes me proud to say that my two sons are heroes to me in many ways. And I count it a blessing to have these young men as an addition to my life's journey. I love you, Vic. I love you, Benjamin. And to both of you, so proud of you, fellas. Keep it up. Keep it up. And along with that, on Father's Day, you know, I started thinking, I talked to our producers, Chris and Julie and Wendy, and there's no better fitting episode on Father's Day. And I feel it's such a blessing to be able to sit here with you, my positivity posse around the world, and share my father, our father, with you. Being the son of Victor Brooks Sr. is it's a blessing in so many ways. This was my first model of what a man is. This was my first model of what a father is. This is my first model of what a son is to his parents. That's special. That's a blessing. And I know my brother Chris and my sister carry their own torches of proud and being blessed as well. Many thanks to my father. Much respect to my father. And I'm not going to have any further ado. I'm going to read you something here that goes deep with my brother and sister and I, because I don't know if we've ever shared it with my dad, but there was Shirley Horn had a song that's a classic, and it's called Here's to Life. The words to this song, I mean, just describes my father's whole essence of life, of dreaming, of living, of not being afraid to go outside of the box, you know, stepping away and aside from the haters, knowing they're there, but continuing on, you know, living life to its fullest. And I want to read these lyrics. We're going to take our time today. Here's to life. No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. But I had learned that all you give is all you get. So give it all you got. I had my share, I drank my fill. And even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still to see what's down another road beyond the hill and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. Funny how the time just flies, how love can go from warm hellos to sad goodbyes, and leave you with the memories you've memorized to keep your winters warm. For there's no yes in yesterday, and who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away. As long as I'm still in this game, I want to play. For life, for laugh, for love. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my father, Pastor Victor Brooks, Sr., to the camera here. Are we here, Dad?
I'm with you.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen. I was the one pushing the wrong button. How you doing, handsome man?
Oh, shut up, boy. I'm doing fine, son. I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dad. And happy Father's Day, man.
Thank you. And happy Father's Day to you, son. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? I don't know. Actually, I growing up, Dad, of course, we were blessed to hear the stories. We know of your life through being your children. I'm going to speak on behalf of me, Chris, and Julie today, you know, and we know what we learned and heard through your life's journey, Dad. And I'm just going to go over a couple of bullet points because I want to share as much as I can with my positivity posse on here today. We have a lot of artists on here today from around the world. We have artists young and you know, this generation, my generation and older. We have people that we've grown up with over the years. I'm talking all the way back to Pine Forge, Oakwood, even some of your, you know, people you've grown up with, Dad, as well. So many are tuning in today. But youngest of 4 children from Eva and Albert Brooks, traditionally from North Carolina, your parents, Eva and Albert Brooks. The youngest of 4 being the oldest, Charles Lee Brooks, your older brother, then Paul Alvester Brooks, then Aunt Ollie Mae Cheatham. Born in Baltimore, Maryland, from the Dallas Court Projects. Let's start there, Dad. You from the hood.
And that is the hood now. Certainly was. Right. Yeah, only about, maybe 4 blocks from Johns Hopkins Hospital. But I was born in the projects. And that was my beginning. And stayed there until I was about, 6 years old. And then we moved to a little town called Arbutus in Baltimore County, outside of Baltimore. That was my beginning there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you remember, how old were you when you moved from Dallas Court again?
I was about 5.5 years old. Yeah. Yeah, we moved near where Dad worked. He was the janitor for the Arbutus Elementary School. So we moved about, a quarter of a mile up the road, and we all lived on a second floor flat. Okay. And Miss Hattie was the lady's name that rented that flat to us. And It was just Mom, Dad, myself, and Ollie at that time was at Pine Forge, Pennsylvania, among the first graduating class at Pine Forge.
Really?
And, yeah. Okay. She was among the first that went there when Pine Forge opened its doors. Okay. So, I used to play in the graveyard next to where we lived. We bordered the graveyard, and Jackie, my niece, she was just a little tiny thing. And
now this is Uncle Charlie's.
This is my oldest brother, Charlie, his daughter, Jackie. Jacqueline Brooks Winston is her name. Right. And Jackie and I would play among in the grave with the tombstones and all that. But we weren't afraid. We had a good time. That's the only place we had to play. Yeah. Yeah. So
did you automatically, now I know that you attended church school for a while and then went to public school.
Yeah,
so which was first?
Of course, I went to Baltimore Academy. Okay. Baltimore Academy was a tall, it was a large it was a house really. And it had about 13 rooms in it. And that was a part of Baltimore, near the reservoir area, Druid Hill Park, where a lot of it was a rich Jewish community. Okay. So our church brought that, and that's where we had grades 1 through 7. And in my class, the teacher taught about 3 classes in one room. Wow. Her name was Ms. Bell. And that's where we started in that school. And we stayed there until I graduated the 7th grade. Okay. I didn't really graduate. It stopped at the 7th grade. So all of my classmates went to Pine Forge Academy. But I don't know why. She never explained it. She said, "No, you're not going away to school. You're going to stay here at home. Okay. You're not going to Pine Forge." And that hurt me so badly because all my friends were there. So she sent me to public school for the first time in my life. I was scared to death because I heard all these stories and preachers talking about how sinful it was and all of this is happening in public schools. So I was afraid. I was a sheltered Seventh-day Adventist kid, and only was home and church for me, okay?
Yeah.
But I went to the Booker T. Washington Junior High School, and there I had a rebirth of Victor Brooks. It was a new beginning, and I had a music teacher, by the way. Her name was Miss Maccabee.
Okay.
And Miss Maccabee looked like a teacher that you would see in the movies. She wore these long dresses. She had these shoes that would tie up on her, and I tried out for the choir. And she said, "Oh, Victor, you can sing." I said, "Well, thank you, ma'am." And she took me under her wings. And the first song I sang, which was a secular song publicly, was a song by Eddie Fisher. Oh gosh, it leaves me right now. But at that time, I was a boy soprano.
Okay.
My voice had not changed yet, and she asked me to sing. Oh, if I'm worried and I can't sleep, I count my blessings but I was singing in a soprano, and she wanted me to sing before the student body.
Okay.
I said, I can't do that. I was a big boy then. I was a little fat boy. And she wanted me to get on stage and sing to all these folk coming out singing like a little girl. But she coached me, and I sang the song. And I must say that at the beginning, there was a little laughter among some of the students. Okay. But it mellowed out. And when I finished singing, I was just overwhelmed. The black student body stood up and clapped at the end of my song. So that gave me inspiration and courage to don't worry about you sounding like a girl singing. Yeah. And that was the beginning. And I found out later, Vic, that Miss Maccabee was the teacher for Cab Calloway.
Because he was from Baltimore.
I was given a book. Yeah. He was from Baltimore, and he was a young teacher in the Baltimore school system. So I felt extra privileged when I read that. I wish I'd known it when he was helping me out. Yeah, but that was the beginning, into a world, into the world of I bounced out on you that time.
Oh, no. We got you. It's the Wi-Fi thing. No. You're here. And okay. what you're saying from middle school now and
it taught me a lot.
It taught you a lot.
Okay. My mind, Vic, to a lot of new things.
Yeah. So growing up from you hit a really interesting point that hit me and Chris Willis were talking about this yesterday. Coming out of your Seventh-day Adventist surrounding at such a young age and going into public school at the time. And I remember I remember when you and Mom also made the decision as well that no, you're gonna stay home, and that to me in retrospect. I even though so many of our family and friends, like you just said, were going to Pine Forge, or going there, but staying home in Memphis and going through that educational system of public school as well. When you went through yours, what was I know navigating the streets in Baltimore at that time, going from house to school, maybe the racial tension in Baltimore at that time as well. In your high school, middle school, putting it all together, what was that journey like?
That's a great question, Vixie. Baltimore, Maryland has a great historical educational background. You see, the school I went to after leaving Baltimore, Booker T. Washington, was Frederick Douglass High School. Okay. And of course, that's where Supreme Court Justice Theodore Marshall graduated from. In fact, the church school that I told you I attended, it was right on Madison Avenue. These street names might not mean a lot, but I went to Madison Avenue, Druid Hill Avenue, is where the educators and the lawyers and of Black community lived. So
Okay.
it was a very good area to go to school.
Right.
And here was a transition that I didn't realize at the time. Even in our math class, our teachers talked about Black history. We learned about Juneteenth way back then when I was in junior high school.
Gotcha.
Everybody was conscious, and my English teacher was a Tuskegee Airman,
Wow.
and boy, we could just ask a question, and he would get off subject and talk about that. But in every class we had, we were given some historical information about our history.
Gotcha.
There was a feeling in Baltimore, being proud of who you were, and it was important to us. And so that's why I said I stepped out of Baltimore Academy and stepped into a new world where I realized it wasn't as bad as I had been taught.
Gotcha.
And I started learning new things, being around different ideas. My closest friend, by the way, was a Catholic guy. His name was Paul Smith. I wish I could find Paul now. But we would argue and debate about him being a Catholic and I'm being a Seventh-day Adventist. And he became my closest friend.
Gotcha.
While in junior high. But we moved on to Douglas, and life began to open its doors even more to Black history, the historical factor of where I was from and who I am as a Black boy, as a Black kid. And I thank Baltimore for that. I thank Baltimore high schools for giving me that.
You know what? I don't know if you can see that, but you have some fellow, I don't know if you call them Baltimoreans that are hitting right here and remembering those street names and just co-signing on the history of Baltimore and the beauty of Baltimore at that time. And I know also now, growing up, Dad, you also grew up not only the youngest of four of your blood siblings, but you also grew up with foster care in your home through your parents, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tell us about that.
Well, I was the only child at home with my mom and dad. And so Mom opened her home up for foster kids when I was 12 years old, almost 12. I was 11 and a half years old, and brought in two young men, young boys. Mickey and Bobby Mays was their name. They became my big brothers. And Mickey had a pretty tarnished history about in his life, but they came into our home, and we lived in a community where there was a couple of gangs. The Bruce Street gang was one. Some of you from Baltimore might remember. Bruce Street was a little street 2 blocks down from where I live. They were the roughest gang in town. Okay, so all they would do is ask you for a quarter. You walk down the street, give me a quarter. And if you didn't give them a quarter, they push you around and push up against the wall. Nobody had a gun. Nobody had a knife,
Yeah.
But I'm drifting off, son.
No, go for it.
I became acquainted with the boy who was the head of the Bruce Street gang. Yeah. And he kind of put me in mind of my little nephew, Sean Fordham. He had bow legs. He walked around like Sean, And so I got to know him. And we saw each other one night at the skating rink on Monroe Street at the Coliseum, and we're blacks, only place blacks to go skating. And he said, "What size shoe you wear?" I said, "I wear a 10 and a half." He said, "That's what I wear." I said, "Oh Lord," I got nervous. Mom and Dad just bought me these brand new roller skate shoes, the shoes and tie up. And lo and behold, he knew where I lived. He came by the house one day and knocked on the door. He said, "Vic, can I borrow your shoes?" And I said, "Oh, I was scared to say no, So I told him, "Yeah, you can borrow." I didn't let Mom and Dad know. He kept my shoes for 2 weeks. And after that, he brought them back to me. And he said, "You my boy, Vic. You my boy, man." But he gave me his shoes back. I didn't have to worry about Blue Street gang. Yeah. They were my people now,
There you go.
But no, I grew up in that environment where it was a great time. We lived in an area which would now be considered the ghetto, as we didn't use that term then. That was our block. That was our neighborhood. and we all looked out for each other as Black families.
So, bro, and that, you know, that story is so, because it helps us see that connection at a young age of out of the box thinking, of respect for someone no matter what walk of life they're from, and then growing up in not in foster care, but growing up in a home with parents who are caring for children. Did that add to that at a young age?
Yeah, it had a great effect on my life. You know, I mean, all the way from that 12-year period until I left to go to college. And Mom had what they called then a special care home. Okay. It was very close to that of a home where now I forget the term. The judge will say, "Look, until we decide what we're going to do with this kid, send him over here." And they're usually like a big group home. Well, special care home was close to that. The judge knew Mrs. Brooks, and there were only 2 juvenile court judges. They said, "Send the child to Miss Brooks's house." So we would get kids any time of the day, in the middle of the night. And when I left to go to Oakwood after I graduated from high school, we had 13 boys and 1 girl living in our home. So that's what I grew up with. And when I graduated from high school, I spent a year at home helping my mother. I didn't go straight to Oakwood. And I became a help to her. We looked around, and there were 5 infants that had been brought to Mom's house at 5 infants, and she took a bedroom in this house, and it was just for the babies. And that was my job, Vic. I had to get up in the morning, and I'd have to go in this room. We didn't have Pampers then. We had cloth diapers. So my job was to change all 5 of those babies, clean them up, and then I would get a big bowl of pablum. Now, a lot of folks don't know what that is, pablum. Okay?
I have no idea.
All right, it was like soft oatmeal. And I had a rolling chair, you know, like these secretary chairs, and I would start at the first crib and give them a spoon. I roll down the next crib, give them a spoon, go down the next, and when I got to the 5th crib, I'd have to start all over again until all this pablum was gone. Okay. See? So that was my job, in working with children, but it did something for me. I didn't know it. Listen, my mom paid me $100 a month. That was a great job to have. I couldn't get a job anywhere paying me $100 a month. So I worked hard. I did the lunches at night. I had to make all the lunches for 13 kids. They didn't have, a feeding program then. And, I kind of enjoyed it. So I grew up with the children, and I began to respect who they were and didn't look down at them because they were considered foster children, as you might say. I don't use that term even today. I'm using it now to be descriptive. But that's I grew up in that environment, man.
Right on, Dad. Yeah. So coming out of that, now we're going.
My mom would
go ahead.
Stand at the door. The sheriff would knock on our door. And I remember some of the little thugs that would come, and they were looking, one little kid I remember clearly, he had a scarf tied around his head, or he straight off the street, judge sent him there. Mom went to the door, and Mom was about 5'11", she weighed about 230 pounds, and Mom would put her hands on her hips like this, and she'd stare at the kids, just give them a stir like that, and you could see them breaking a little bit. Because Mom would be up, they would be like 2 steps down, and she'd look at them like that. And you'd see them just kind of changing their little attitude.
Right.
And when Mom saw that break come in, Mom would then reach her arms out. And this has been the theme of our life. You're home now.
Right.
Give me a hug. Right. And they would fall into my mother's arms and hug her as she would welcome them into her home. Yeah. That's what I learned and didn't realize the effect it was going to have on my life. That lady did it right there.
There you go. I remember Mommy, as we call our grandmother, with that hand on her hips, boy. She did it when she loved you, and she did it when she was trying to teach you something as well. Both times, But now let's go into, we're ready for college. Now, going to after high school, was it ever a decision like I'm going to go here or I'm going to end up at Oakwood, or was Oakwood the focus at that time? And
well, Oakwood was the focus. I mean, it was the only black college where, well, I should say better another way. That's where most of our students who graduated around the country who could afford it would go to Oakwood College.
Okay.
And that was my focus. I mean, right. I wanted to go to Pine Forge and she wouldn't let me, but now, I'm ready to go to college. And I'll give you an idea. I mean, I received a scholarship to University of Maryland to study music therapy. And it was a full scholarship. I mean, I had received a scholarship while at Edmondson High School. And that's another story how I got there.
Wow.
But I received what they called a merit scholarship to Peabody Conservatory when I was in my 11th grade. They chose 5 students out of all of Baltimore County to go to the conservatory. Okay. And so, as you know, that's a college level a conservatory. And so I was getting a reputation within the Baltimore County system that music, this young man, keep your eye on him. So Mrs. Chester was my mentor. She was my music instructor, and I became president of the choir at Edmondson High School. You see, we were a part of the forced integration. Edmondson was. I was at Douglas High for a year. Then they built this new high school in a very relatively Jewish community, Edmondson Village. At that time, it was. And there were about 1,400 students, and they brought in about 150, maybe 60 of us who were black from around the city for forced integration. So that was my beginning of being around white folk.
Wow.
As a teenager. So that was the beginning of that.
Yeah. Now, and see, I'm pretty sure that, and what we're hearing, Dad, is all through the journey you've given us just thus far is laying a foundation.
Which I wasn't aware of.
I know, and that's like what me, Chris, and Julie talk about is that, this foundation of growing up, as we call, in the hood, and then progressing through your journey in church school, and then in the public school, and then now you're into one of the first forced integrations in our country of dealing now with the racial in-your-face type of a situation. With that, all of that you had at this point, once you arrived at Oakwood, what did you carry with you? Well, let's first start to say, what was the Oakwood experience like then? What was
one of the greatest moments in time of my life?
Tell us about it.
I was so thrilled to be around many of my friends who we were all at Allegheny Camp meeting. That's when it was all one Allegheny Camp meeting. And
there wasn't an Allegheny East and an Allegheny
No, that was before it separated into Allegheny East and West.
Okay.
And so that was a great experience because, it was almost like being around my folk and my friends. Yeah. And I wasted my first year. I played around. I wasn't serious about my classes. The end of my sophomore year, no, it was my freshman year. I'm studying for the ministry. That was my major, theology to be a preacher, okay?
All right.
And so the yearbook came out. And to my surprise, the student body would vote for different people in the college who they felt blah, blah, blah. Well, it came out, and here my picture's in there as the most humorous on campus. I'm studying theology, and I'm the funniest guy on campus. So can you imagine? I got called aside with Merv Warren, who was a young professor, associate professor at Oakwood at the time. I remember I came out of church one Sabbath, Moran Hall, and Dr. Warren pulled me over. He said, "Now, Vic, you're studying for the ministry." I said, "That's right." He said, "Well, it doesn't look very good that you are the funniest person on campus, the most humorous." And that kind of hit me, So I slowed
your roll
down a bit. What's the term?
You slowed your roll.
Yeah, and his mom just said I slowed my roll. That's what he said.
Right, I got you.
But they were great days, Vic.
Oh
I
man,
learned
yeah.
a lot. The experience of being in Huntsville, Alabama. I often challenge my mom, how in the world did y'all let me go
Right.
down to Huntsville doing this is the civil rights period. This is
Exactly.
when Dr. King was very active and all of the other civil rights groups and movements were about. But she sent me in the heart of this segregated area. It was something.
Exactly. And it's like we're almost, because that was my next point. From coming from Baltimore with the foundation you had laid there, and then just being introduced to the interracial program there. And now you're smack dab, like you just said, in the heart of Dixie. You're in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, just out of high school. What was that experience like? Just not even just socially, but also on campus as an advocate.
It started on the Chattanooga Choo Choo. You see, the Chattanooga Choo Choo would leave out of Washington, D.C., and would go to Chattanooga. And then we would change the train and continue into Huntsville. Well, that was my first experience. Now, on the Chattanooga Choo Choo, at the Union Station, blacks and whites were sitting together. Then, when we got to Chattanooga, the porters now were all black. I don't remember seeing a white porter. And when we got to Chattanooga, there were a couple of us black kids in the back. And they said to us, now, when you get off this train, first of all, he said, when you get off of it, he said, keep your eyes straight ahead, look down, and there is a little window you can go to if you want something to eat. But he said, I would recommend you finding that train, and we'll tell you where it is. You get on that train, because when you get on that train, they're going to tell you to sit in the back coach. That's where blacks would sit. That was the beginning of me feeling this whole thing of racism. And in fact, none of us tried to get anything to eat. We just found that train and we got on it and sat in that back coach.
Right.
You know what, Vic, which I'm excited about? Those black porters, those Afro-American porters, call them what you want, we call ourselves colored, Negro, black. We got a lot of names for ourselves. But the fact is, they took care of us. When we got on that train, they brought us little knickknacks. They brought us sodas back there to drink. And that was the beginning of me realizing, hey, I'm in a different area than I was in Baltimore. But mind you this now, when I grew up in Baltimore, I could not try on shoes but in one store, and that was Bragg or Gutman's. My mom would often take me to Hochul Cone, Stewart's, and they were very racist there. And I felt as a kid, but Mom and Dad warned me, but Mom would always like to buy nice things. Okay. And sometimes you can get better products at Hochul Cone and Stewart, May Company than you could get at Braggers. But I grew up realizing but it didn't hit me as much until I got the train stopped in Huntsville. And this little train station, which I have on my wall, painted by an artist right now. Right. Where we walked in here, and there was this big room with a furnace sitting in the middle of the floor, and we were told immediately, don't go in there. You can't sit in there. You go over on this side. And there was a little small area where the black folks sit. I said, oh, Lord, here it is. I'm down here now. I'm down here. And I'm in Huntsville now. So that was the beginning of me going from the train station straight to the campus, again, which I was sheltered there.
Now, what do you mean when you say that? What do you mean?
Sheltered? Man, what do you mean? Boys had to sit on one side, girls had to sit on one side. You could only go downtown and do any shopping if the dean of the men, Malcolm Dean was his name, would take us in groups down to do shopping. You see, we go downtown, and there was Church Street, which was the black street, which as I got a little older became my hangout down there. Okay. Blood, a guy named Blood had a shoe shop. Blood was an ex-boxer. Okay. And Blood and I became friends. And we got so tight, I'd go in there and Blood wouldn't even charge me to shine my shoes. Okay. So that was my beginning of Church Street. And they had Sis Trunks. Some of y'all out there may know Sis Trunks had the best fried chicken you ever want to eat in your life.
This
So
is
we
in
go down,
Huntsville.
we sneak off campus, you see.
Right.
We sneak off campus and go to Sistrunks and sit way in the back because we didn't want anybody to see us. We had no business downtown. That's what I mean, sheltered. We couldn't go by, but we sometimes get off campus and go down there. And but I became acquainted with the Reverend Snodgrass. He had the church there on Church Street, and we became friends. And that's another story which I won't go into.
No, please tell us that Snodgrass name. And I know we have my buddy Kenny Anderson, who's on here with us as well. Hey, Kenny. Oh my God, so many people are giving love. We got Steve Patterson here, Trina Petty and Butch out of St. Louis.
Give them all my love. Yeah.
Gail and Bill Murphy are sending love to you. But, I definitely want to know, being now a student at Oakwood, and you just gave that whole feeling of that difference now, and now you're in the South.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned the sheltering at Oakwood and then into a whole other way of life and thinking socially as a Black man now, young Black man growing into his thing. What was, and being the civil rights movement, or really the beginning of that era, right? Yeah. Was there an involvement with Oakwood being one of the first HBCUs, right? I mean, I would think that historically there was a campaign of Black power or Black pride during there. What was that there at that time as well?
Oh yeah, it was there. You could feel it. You had to be very careful though. You knew your place when you went downtown to Huntsville. A dear friend of mine, Lord Major, who's a retired pastor, Lord and I would Lloyd had a car, so we'd be able to get off campus. And I remember we went down to City Hall, and it was, I can't think of his name. He was running for governor of Alabama at the time. He had been a sheriff, very, very mean. That's when I saw, we were standing against the wall at a building across from the courthouse, and this guy gets up and he says, nigga this, nigga that, nigga this, nigga that. Can I say that on your show?
Yes, you can.
All right, and that's what he was talking about. He put us down this big, and so that's when I first got scared, because these white folk were looking at us. There weren't many Blacks down there at all. So we went down to Signify. I mean, that was our purpose. But it got so bad that Lloyd and I kind of drifted away, went down the street, got in his car, and left. Now, that's when I realized the depth of the hateful behavior and of white folk at that time. They did not like us at all. We had Tolliver's. We could get good hamburgers there, which was a Black man, Mr. Tolliver, and we had Sistrunks. Those are the only places we could eat. Other than that, you'd better be careful where you went downtown. So that's when I say we were sheltered for a reason. You see, they knew, those professors, and they knew what was going on. But I got in trouble, Vic. I got in real trouble. After that incident, something began to happen inside. Of course, civil rights movement was very strong. It was growing, I should say.
Right.
So I mentioned Reverend Snodgrass. We went down to his, now he knew Victor and Henry Wright and Billy Wright and Fitzgerald Jenkins, because our quartet sang there on several occasions on Sunday morning. So, yes, the Versatiles, the original Versatiles, okay? And so Lord and I went down, and before I knew it, we were participating in the civil rights movement. And Reverend Snodgrass on one occasion said, Victor, I want you to lead the songs. So I began leading songs for our civil rights meetings. Our meetings were basically for voter registration in Huntsville. So that was the beginning of me getting involved. So I began to take paraphernalia, caps and buttons and what have you, out to Oakwood College and hand out to students. I was a member of CORE then. McKissick was the guy who was my inspiration. But anyway, after about a few weeks of distributing paraphernalia, I got a call into the president's office. And the president stated to me, Victor, I understand you have been passing out civil rights caps and et cetera, et cetera. He said, that is not allowed. We as Seventh-day Adventists do not get involved in these activities.
Wow. And
if you do it again, there will be reckoning. Wow. So I said, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm not going to call his name. Might offend some people. But I left the office, okay? And of course, the next night I was back down there at Reverend Snodgrass Church. So the second time he called me and he said, you will be suspended from Oakwood College. You're continually doing it. I said, yes, sir. So left out there, we went back and did it again until finally we didn't hear any more about that.
Wow.
Now let me tell you this little story here.
Yeah.
I'll make it quick, babe. I know you might want to move on to something else.
Go for it.
But you see, I myself, among others, I'd become one of those involved in that civil rights activity in Huntsville. So it came up about Dr. Martin Luther King coming to Huntsville, Alabama. All right. The biggest venue at that time for Black folk was Ashby Auditorium.
Okay.
Now, mind you, I'd already been told that we should not get involved. We as that do not get involved in these civil rights activities. I won't even go into what's happening in the church at that time. But getting into this now, I heard in the meeting, I was sitting there.
Yeah.
And they said, well, the only place we can go is Oakwood College. Now, a book has been written about this, and I confronted the author in a genteel way that didn't happen the way that was written in this book.
Okay.
The fact is that Oakwood had to bring Dr. King on campus. Can you imagine what would have happened in the press?
Wow.
If Oakwood had come out with that kind of rhetoric coming from the Southern Union at that time, stating that we are not going to allow Dr. King come on campus. Dr. King came. That's the first time I saw Dr. King. Mm-hmm. All of my boys and all the versatiles, we sat on the front row, had our legs crossed with our black shoes shine and mohair suits, and that's when we first saw Dr. King.
Okay.
And that was an experience of my life. I didn't get to touch him or shake his hand or nothing.
Right.
You know?
No, I got you. But you know what now? I can see in some of the quotes, and I'm agreeing with a lot of the people that are sending their comments here. It is a mind blow. I have to be honest. And like I said, so many here are agreeing with that's a very interesting statement, that even though Oakwood, and I'm pretty sure that Oakwood was not probably the only one at that time, where the hesitation of getting involved in civil rights, making a stance, making a statement, of civil rights in itself, and the activism. Now, with that, I'm pretty sure there was a shot being called above Oakwood. I'm going to say that. Would you agree with that? That there was there was another decision-making body, maybe. I'm hoping that that's what it was.
There was no other decision-making body. The strongest decision-making body that blacks could only look at during that time was the local regional conferences. Okay. And there's history behind that. Why do we have them? Because we had a group of black ministers, leaders, that is, and laymen who said, we want to control and run our own local conferences. Stop trying to tell us what to do. While I pastored in South Central Conference, I had the opportunity of meeting a couple of the oldest ministers who Elder Dudley brought in as part of our various ministerial meetings. And one I will always remember, I'm not going to give his name, I will always remember him saying to us, when he was pastoring down in Alabama, the conference official walked in his church while he was preaching and walked up on the pulpit, and some of the folk out here might know what I'm talking about, interrupted the service and took over and made the announcements of whatever he wanted to say and stayed there until the church was over. When he walked out, this pastor now, who was in his 90s, had bought a relatively new Chevrolet. And he walked out, getting in his Chevy. This conference official, white brother, walked up and said, whose car is this? He says, sir, this is my car. He said, well, you don't deserve driving this car. Where'd you get the money to buy it? He said, I want you to get rid of that car. Now that's what was said to him. He told this to all of us ministers, and you see, so there was this systemic racism that was way back then in the church. And when I became a minister in the South Central Conference, you got to understand, Vic, I'd done a lot of things before coming to the ministry at 36 years old. I'd been involved in civil rights, beginning at Oakwood College. I'd been involved in civil rights movements as an adult, growing up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, working there, getting involved. And I said something to a group of people just this past Friday. These were agency directors here in North Carolina. I would say they were mostly white. And I said to them, I said, you know what? I made up my mind when I was in high school, I was going to learn everything I could know about white folk. And one year I had 11 W-2 forms. My father teased me about it. I said, Dad, I got a purpose here. I want to find out everything I can about white folk. I'm going to apply for every job that black folk don't get. And you know what? Most of the time I got that job. Reason, I learned how to talk to them. I learned their whole behavior. I knew what they were expecting me to say and how to do it. And I got in there just to find out everything about corporate America. And I did.
Gotcha.
That had a lot to do with my life coming into the ministry. My pastorate wasn't just Breath of Life Seventh Adventist Church. It wasn't just Longview Church. I wanted to open the door to every denomination, of every creed, of every race, of every people in Memphis. And those that remember my pastorate there, that was my goal and my aim. I got involved with politics. Yes, I did. I got involved with ministers from all denominations. By the way, I ended up pastoring, as we call the First Day Church. It was the wealthiest black church in Memphis, Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. There were about 12 millionaires in that church. And they asked me to be their pastor. Now, I called Elder Dudley. I'm running a tent meeting on Lamar Avenue. I called Elder Dudley and said, Chief, listen, they want me to come here first to be an interim, just to fill in on Sunday. He said, Vic, you go ahead and do that. Dudley was a special guy, man. He said, but now I'm running a tent meeting. You know what he tells me to do? What? He said, listen, why don't you order about another 1,000 bulletins for your tent meeting and have the ushers to pass them out. I said, Chief, I can't do that. He said, you can do that, Vic. You can do that, Vic. He said, Vic, go ahead and order them. So I ordered them, and they shipped them to me in 2 days. Wow. So the Sunday that I got there to preach, I handed them out to the ushers. I said, now, as the members leave, just pass these handbills out. And I didn't know what the reaction was going to be.
I got you.
Right. You know what? 2 weeks later, A. Maceo Walker, whose father was the founder of this church, who was the founder of Universal Life Insurance and the head of one of the oldest black banks, said, Vic, he said, Reverend Brooks, we'd like for you to serve as interim pastor. I called Dudley again. I said, Chief, they want me to come here and be? He said, Vic, do it. I said, oh, Lord, Chief, you're serious about it? He said, Vic, do it. So I pastored that First Day Church for over a year. You remember it because you sang. I brought the Breath of Life choir there. They would sing. And then they had virtually their music was about dead. So I invited Gail Murphy, who was my minister of music.
Oh, go ahead.
You see, I brought Gail in, and Gail developed a choir.
Yes, she did.
Tore that church up. That church had about 700 members in it. Yeah. And then it came, folk were joining church on Sunday. Some Sunday I would get them and say, Happy Sabbath, and they would laugh. I said, oh, I'm sorry, folk, I didn't mean to say that, And so that's a true story, And people started joining church. They wanted to get them baptized. Again, I called my chief. I called Bishop Dudley. And I called, Dudley said, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I said, okay, I baptized over 150 people there. One Sunday morning, Oh, see, Mom just said you're talking too long. I want to
No, no, no. Go ahead.
You got me excited now. And I looked in the rear of the church, and there was Elder and Sister Dudley coming in the back. And I stopped preaching. They came in right while I stopped. I said, "Oh, my bishop just walked in."
Just walked in. I remember that day.
Do you remember that song? And Dudley sitting back here like this. No. I said, if my bishop, Elder Charles Dudley, if he could just come up here, Dudley walked up, But those were experience of developing a ministry, I think, that we should not be closed door. We should be out there involving ourselves in the community, getting to know people in the community. And that's left. I'll leave it at that.
Hey, you know what, Dad? And we're talking about leaving the door open. I remember not just when it comes to the social political thing. I remember like you're going back. You're taking me back into things that I remember growing up, and I'm sure Chris and Julie are around. The special moments in life, the never knowing who we were going to see as a family, who we were going to see at the breakfast table on Sunday. I mean, literally leaving the door open at home as well of people. I remember there was a family from Mexico, beautiful family, who were stranded. I believe something happened with their car or something.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we woke up, meaning Chris and Julie and I, we woke up for breakfast, and there was a beautiful Mexican family sitting at the breakfast table, and we became instant family.
Yeah.
They hardly spoke English. We, of course, didn't speak Spanish, but that whole feeling of helping someone in need, those are the foundations that you grew up with and passed down to us. And I remember family friends who would look at the house as a haven in some ways, that we knew we could go and kind of get the load off. We can go there and leaving the gate open for this generation, Dad. I remember a book in your library called Bridging the Generation Gap when I was a little kid. And I remember picking through that book and reading, segments of that book. And it really didn't hit me until later in life how important that is. Mm-hmm. Especially now, Dad, with the protests, and we see our young people moving and doing their thing. With your history, your foundation, when you see the protest and the movement now, how important is that of keeping that gate open now to you?
Oh, I get extremely excited. I'm thrilled of what's happening right now. I just wish I could participate in the march. I wish I could get out there, but right now I can't take heat, I can't walk that well. But I no, I'm seriously now. I think it's a great thing. I think we're at a very major pivotal point here of life beginning to change. Now, when I say that, I'm not excited 100% that we're going to make a change. Racism is embedded in the DNA of this country. And I think it will remain here until Jesus comes. I don't believe that's going to change. As my dad would say, when I was a kid, we'd ride through Baltimore, and there'd be a cemetery over here. And my dad would say, "Vic, you know what, son?" I said, "What, Dad?" He said, "Some of the greatest white folk ever lived right over there." See him right over there? He said, I didn't understand what he was saying. He was saying that white folk who are racist are going to have to die out. He said, that's what you see over there. They're gone. So I look at this thing now as there's still that racist element of just because my skin is a different color. Vic, this I don't have time to go into all this.
No, go for it.
This thing goes way back. I spoke to a group a week ago that I can remember my granddaddy. You remember Randall? He loved you, Vic. He was born a slave, okay? I can talk about things that he talked to me about his nephew riding down on a cart in the middle of Nash Street where the sheriff had killed him and beat him unmercifully and shot him, and he had his foot on him riding down Nash Street, intimidating other blacks as he crossed the tracks and went into the black community. You see? I can recall, why I'm thrilled about change is the fact that there was a little boy at the age of 7 that was sold to a dear friend of the overseer of a plantation. Now, this overseer would sneak into one of these little cabins after he had beat the slaves in the morning to work and gave them slop to eat and then beat them again if they didn't move fast enough for him. He would sneak into this little cabin and he began to rape this little beautiful slave girl. Her name was Annis, by the way. And he got so enamored with this slave girl, he moved her 7 blocks away from his white family in Wayne County.
Okay.
You know, and he had 7 children by this lady, had 7 by his white wife. I didn't know any of this until you found it on Ancestry. And you sent me all of the records, finding out that that little boy that was sold at 7 years old was my grandfather, Hatch Brooks. Annis kept the name of Brooks because she was on the Brooks plantation. Ray Casey, who I'd heard the name but had no meaning to me. That was my daddy's grandfather, the white overseer. So that was my great-grandfather. That's as far as I can go back on that side. So I have a lot inside of me. I hated Ray Casey for a long, long time until I realized, well, I can't hate him anymore. You know, he's my blood, but still I didn't like what he had done to that beautiful little girl named Annis, who's my great-grandmother. You follow me right now?
I follow you right now.
This stuff stirs up in me sometime. When I see these white racists screaming and yelling and talking about their anger coming out of just the Hemet mess, just terrible things coming out, I get upset. As I talk to you now, I get upset.
I got you.
Okay? But at 70, I'll be 78 in another couple of months. So I just have to keep myself calm a little bit right now. But
you know what, Dad? That brings me to this other point. When we look at these young people out here, Dad, we see their passions, we see their anger, we see their protest as well of what they're feeling. And we just mentioned generationally and historically the movement of equality, fighting against systemic racism, and the beauty of what these young people are doing. What was the positivity and the hope during those times when we hear Martin Luther King used to say, you know, things that my hope is this. My love is this. We heard remnants and pulls of positivity that came from the civil rights fighters at that time and on down. What held it together? What was the positivity and the hope during that time that kept it together?
You've used the word in your comment, Vic. It was hope. That's what it was all about. Okay. We hoped for change. We walked for change. We hoped that what was being said as our civil rights leader, we hoped that it would make change. And there was some change made, you know, but that's what kept us going, kept us alive, you know, keeping the faith and having the hope that someday we would be heard as a people.
Gotcha.
And that kept us, when I had a shotgun pulled on me one time as I went to a house on the outskirts of Huntsville. This is a black family. And the man put his rifle up and told me to get off his porch. I understood it. We had gone through training there at Snodgrass's church. Our black folk were scared to death of us knocking on their door, that the master who they worked for might intimidate them or even kick them out of the house they were renting or even lose their job. Sure, but in spite of that, we kept going. We had hope. We kept knocking on doors, and results positively came out of that. Let me say something right now. White folk, you can't keep us down. You can try to keep us from voting. In Georgia, you can see that the voting machines in the black communities are broken down. You can see that many of them who are good machines are hid in warehouses. It's still a battle. It's still a fight, but I still have hope.
Right on.
I still have hope. I ain't never seen Jesus. I preached about him, talked about him all the time. My hope is that someday I will be with him. Hope is the greatest thing we have as Black folk, but hope isn't all. We got to act upon it. We got to get out there and run our mouth. We got to demonstrate, and we got to make it clear we are somebody. I am somebody. And that's my theme to every young person I talk to. I let them know when I sit them down, you're somebody. And don't you ever forget it. Don't get me upset.
No. You know what? It's a what we call at the Positivity Posse, Dad, it's a positive passion. That's what it is. You dig? I mean, and to hear, and that's why it's so important, I mean, to that I use the expression to leave that gate open, because our young people are going to talk to someone, if not just themselves, you know? And if they have a mission of anger, if they have things that they're confused about, which has happened now and generationally has happened, I consider it a blessing to be able, number one, to be able to have been raised under your gate being open. And knowing that I could come to you even when I had a confusement, even when I had something that we may not have agreed upon. I learned at a young age that there's a difference between an argument and a debate. You learn so much in a debate. There's another lesson that was learned. And that's why my passion right now, Dad, is to continue that communication, that bridging the gap, especially with our artists, Dad. And I remember that over my life growing up, we had music of all kinds playing in the house. Yes. We had, I mean, come on, we had bossa nova, we had classical, we had even mambo, we had, you know, soul, we had jazz. I remember getting picked up from school at Annanite Elementary School, and, you know, we would have stylistics playing in the car. So what the mood was going on.
Don't tell everybody our business, okay, son? Don't do that. Don't tell everybody our business. Yeah. See, a lot of folk already said that Victor Brooks is going to hell, you know, for the things that I've talked about and the things that I've done. But
wait, who told you going to hell?
Yeah, I've been told I'm going to hell. I sure have. Yeah.
Lord mercy.
Yeah, I've been told. I know. I don't tell y'all everything. See? Hey, Vic, do you remember? Especially you, because Vic, you really get uptight when somebody says something about your mom and dad, and I love you, that baby. I love you, that. But you know what? You made me think of something when you said music, and this will be brief. Cut me off if I go too long.
Go ahead.
But I was thinking about the civil rights movement, and I was thinking about music, the power of music. Mom and I were working in a tent meeting, not a tent meeting, it was an evangelistic meeting in Alabama, and in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Joyce Bryant was a part of that. Now, some of you out there really don't know anything about Joyce Bryant. Joyce Bryant was a silver bomber. She was on the back page of every Ebony magazine, dressed in silver. Her hair was dyed silver, but she was one of the most powerful entertainers. She had levels. She could go way above high school. But the point is, we were in this meeting in Atlanta, and one of her greatest fans was Dr. Martin Luther King.
Wow.
Okay, and so Joyce called me one Saturday night, and she said, Victor, I want you and Snook to come by and pick me up. I've got to go somewhere, and it's going to be a church service. She didn't tell us where we were going, okay? Yeah. So Snook and I got dressed, and we picked her up, and here we pulled up in front of the Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Okay.
And said, lo and behold, people all in the street, everywhere, and we pulled up, and as soon as Joyce got out of the car, the deacon recognized her. And he came over to me and he said, sir, we'll park the car. We walked in that church and we're standing in the back. It wasn't only Mom, Joyce, and myself. It was Elder Warren Banfield and his wife, okay?
Yeah.
And we're all standing in the back, and Dr. King's mother was at the organ, and she stood up kind of and begged us to come this way, being led by two ushers.
Okay.
And they carried us to the front of the church. Church is packed, man. There's no seats in there. She got rid of 5 choir members who were sitting right behind Dr. King. And That's where we sat. Now, can you imagine how your dad felt? This was the Sunday after the speech of I Have a Dream in Washington. So it was, I mean, I didn't know. My whole body felt different because I loved that man. I loved him dearly. And so after he preached, well, Joyce sang for him, you know, his eyes on the sparrow. And we went downstairs afterward, and we were standing with Coretta King and the two little children at that time. Baby girl hadn't been born yet. Okay. And her mother, Dr. King's mother. So he finally comes over. They're down there eating, I call it that stuff mixed up with sherbet and ginger ale, and you know,
frappe.
Frappe, that was my term, wasn't it? Frappe. And so, you know, he came over, and I'm like, oh God, here comes Dr. King. And he said, listen, I want y'all to follow me. We're going to go out for dinner together. I said, Lord have mercy. Mom and I, we had only been married. Mom and I had only been married 52 days. When this happened. Oh, yeah, we were young. Mom was 19 and I was 21, man. Right. Yeah. And so we got our car and we followed the entourage over to Pasco Brothers Restaurant. That was the finest place to eat for black folk at that time in Atlanta, Georgia. You know, you had the cloth and the silverware and the china and all that. When we got there, they parked our cars and a table was set up in the middle of the restaurant. Just for us. That was Papa King, Mama King, ML, and Coretta, and the two kids, and the four of us that were there. Well, Dr. King inspired me so much. The line outside, Vic, and I'll make it brief, was about a block long. Mm-hmm. And Dr. King he went to the end of that line, shook everybody's hand. He came in, and the restaurant is packed. Everybody knew this was the King family. And he went to every table and greeted everybody. Mm-hmm. I was so thankful that he came to the table because I was getting tired of drinking iced tea with a little lemon in it. I wanted to eat. And so he came to the table, and Lord have mercy, thank you, Jesus. Dr. King sat right in front of across from each other at the table. And next to me was Mom on my left, and here was Elder Warren and his wife. And I'll tell you, Mom and Dad were there, Mom and Pop King. We sat there in that restaurant for over 2 hours and had just a good time. Wow. And finally I said, Dr. King, would you please do me a favor? And he said, sure. He said, you know, call me Victor. Sure, Victor. He said, I'd like for you to talk to my mother. Can we get to a telephone? And he begged for one of the Pasco brothers to came over to the table. And he escorted us back to his office. And I dialed my mom. I said, Mom, I've got somebody here I'd like for you to speak with. And so she said, all right, son, who? I said, I'll just give you the phone. Well, I handed the phone to Dr. King, and all of a sudden, I could hear Mom, but I didn't hear what she was saying. And she was loud. I tell you, Mom was loud. Dr. King started laughing. And if anybody remember his voice, his laugh was just a very robust sound. You know, he laughed. And so I said, what's funny? What are you laughing at? And so he handed me the phone. And I said, Mom, what's going on? I said, did you know who this was? She said, of course I did, boy. He said, as soon as I heard his voice, I knew it was Dr. Martin Luther King. And I thanked him for that, and he and Mom had a few more words. But we sat down after that, Vic. I thank God that we had the opportunity to be, he even said, don't call me Dr. King. That's all I would call him. He said, call me ML, Victor. And I felt that so personal. And so Warren Banfield, we got into religion. And you know what he said? What? He said, one of the greatest preachers I've ever heard preach was a man by Cleveland. He preached in a tent meeting while I was pastoring in Montgomery, Alabama. He said, that was a preaching man. I said, well, believe it or not, that's who we're working with. This is his brother, Harold Cleveland. here in evangelistic meeting. Isn't that something how life goes?
Oh, come on,
but after that, Mom and Coretta King, Mrs. King, they shared numbers and stayed in touch for
that's
about a year. Dr. King invited us to a couple of little gatherings there, and while we were yet in Atlanta before the end of the meeting. So that is a moment that I will cherish all of my life. When he was assassinated, Vic, you might remember, I didn't want to hear his name. I didn't want to see anything on TV about it. I was so hurt and saddened by it. It took me almost a year before I really began talking about it. You might remember that, Dr. King.
Don't. No.
Yeah. So these moments in my life are special, you know? And let me say this, how much more time we have?
You know what? We are closing out, but Dad, we got to do a part 2. And when we do a part 2, Dad, I would like to invite some of our younger Positivity Posse people to be on camera with us as well. Some of our young artists and some of our young protesters as well, you know. But, you know, you made me think about something, Dad, when you mentioned how Martin Luther King took his time to personally talk to people. And at that age, I believe that also may have started to form in you what actual legends are made of, what people of substance are made of, because it reminded me of following around with you and Muhammad Ali out here in the 80s, where Muhammad Ali, your boy, and Muhammad would do the same exact thing.
Yeah, sure
he would do the same exact thing. You remember that, you know?
Can I close with a short story about Muhammad Ali?
You close with whatever you want, Dad.
We were traveling together to Vancouver, British Columbia. So when we got off the airplane and walking through the terminal, people realized here was Ali. It was just Ali, his manager, and myself, 3 of us. And here people were calling Ali, and waving and bring their kids over to him. And he took his time. And we got outside, got in the limousine. And this is going to be in my book.
Please.
Little quiet moments like this. Ali said, he had 3 names for me. He called me Reverend, he called me Professor, and he called me Doctor. Okay. So I don't remember what he called me that day. But he looked at me and said, see all that just happened out there? See all them white folk out there hugging me, glad to see me? He said, just remember one thing. To many of them who call my name, I'm still a nigger to them. And I'll always remember that. Ali knew who he was. He knew what he was inside. But people sometimes will make over a black person. They love to see him in sports. They love to hear him sing. But in those closed doors, Vic, a lot of them still look at us as a nigger.
My God.
And I've learned that over my years. And I thank God that many of us at my age are able to walk in a room and be able to look and see who are genuine and who's not.
Gotcha.
And that's something you can only develop through wisdom and through the years. Next time we talk, I'd love to talk again. I like to talk when we were burned in effigy on my TV show in Huntsville.
Come on.
That came down.
You actually had the first Victor Brooks show. What was that?
We had the first, well, it was called then, it was my first Victor Brooks show was a radio show I had in Pottstown. But Huntsville, my TV show was called People and Issues.
In Huntsville.
And from what I was told, that was the first black television show. We were on for 1 hour every Sunday at 4 o'clock. And our show became so popular that the news director of WAAY, I think it was, I can't remember, became upset because the ratings for the People and Issues jumped way above the news. And the manager called me in. He said, Vic, he said, man, so-and-so, he's upset with you. I said, I ain't done nothing. He said, man, I'm just doing my TV show, you know? He said, well, you better walk Treadley because he's upset about your ratings that you got. But anyway, he was a white boy, and I can understand how he felt about it at the time. But we did our thing. But thank God that, you know, during that period of time, we were confronted to have the Ku Klux Klan became very upset with something that I got involved with.
No, and please tell me about that.
Well, it was only two of us black young men who were part of the Junior Chamber of Commerce. Also, I was a member of
In
the Chamber.
Huntsville.
This is Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah. At the time, I was working at Oakwood they didn't know what to call me at that time. I was community relations director, but I sat in the office of the director of public relations and development. Calvin Rock, Dr. Rock, requested for me just to take that job. But at the same time, I was working. I had the TV show. And so I missed one of my meetings with the Junior Chamber of Commerce. You see, we were in charge of the Madison County fair every year. So one of the guys called me at the office and said, Vic, you missed. And I never missed. It's amazing. I never missed a meeting. He called me and said, Vic, you know what happened last night when you missed this meeting? I said, what, man? He said, they voted to let the Klan have a booth at the fair. I said, I know you lying. He said, no. He said, we sure did. So I called the guys who were officers in it. He said, well, Vic, they got a right to do this. I said, okay. Well, I got a TV show too, and I got a right to talk about what I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So I brought it up on the TV show that they are coming, and I invited the NAACP leader there in Huntsville at the time. Well, little I know that hell was breaking out now because of that TV show. And I went to my office the next morning, Monday morning after the show. My parking, Donovan's Mall. I had an office upstairs at the time. I had an employment agency, by the way. I left Oakwood and I didn't know what to do, so I bought an agency and it's called Apex. So anyway, I pulled up at my parking lot and it was full. And in the back of the lot were about 5 pickup trucks that had the flag, the Confederate flag, and you could see their rifles hanging in the back of the window. Make it short, a sheriff came over to me. Now, I knew the chief of police in Huntsville. I didn't really know the sheriffs much. He said, Brooks, I'll take you up to your office. I said, oh, Lord, what is going on now? I got up to my office. My phone rings. It's the mayor, Joe. What's his name? Joe something. And he said, Vic, what are you trying to cause hell to break loose in my town? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. He said, well, hell is breaking loose. People are looking. I said, oh, Lord. I said, well, look, all I did was tell the truth. All I said was I didn't think the Klan should be represented at our county fair. Well, that's when it started, Vic. And I had the opportunity. I did another show, invited all the Klan who could come. And but you see what was happening behind the scenes. Redstone Arsenal, who was the main body of, employment there in the city. Commerce came from Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal had put pressure on the mayor, the city council, and all of the little companies or factories or that was associated with NASA and Redstone Arsenal had said, you better get those folk out. I didn't know this at the time, you see? Next thing I know, that Robert Shelton, who was the Grand Dragon who lived in Alabama, of all of the Klan, decides to hold a press conference at the Sheraton Hotel, I believe it's University Boulevard. And there he claimed, we are going to leave because there's a rebel rouser that's got a TV show in town, and he's been fighting thugs out of Chicago and Detroit, and they're going to harm our women and our children. That's you can read that. That's in the news. If you go back and see it. And so, well, I held a press conference too.
Right.
I held a press conference and I denied all of that. I said, we know who he's talking about. But you know what happened? Robert Shelton walked off of that set, the news conference, had an entourage of Ku Klux Klans, about 30 cars. They followed him on out of Huntsville to a farm heading north toward Tennessee. The media was with them. And there they hung me in effigy. They burned me on a cross. And this was on the news, man.
Wow. I never knew that.
Well, did you remember the sheriffs parked out in front of our house?
I do.
Do you remember a truck would park in front of our house? What was the street we lived on?
Marymount, yeah.
Marymount Drive. They would have a truck, one of the clans would park out there and just intimidate us. Now, I was afraid at that time for my family because they were still killing us down there in Alabama. But somehow I asked the Lord to protect us as a family. And the sheriff and the police protected us. They looked out for us. Well, the bottom line is the Klan did not have a booth, whatever their reason was. They didn't have a booth.
They didn't get the booth.
And the people in this show and the Victor Brooks family and all the other blacks in the community cheered and went on until finally the mayor said, you know, Brooks, I wasn't really upset with you. I said, get out of here, man. We were on that kind of a turn. I said, don't hand me that stuff. You know, but that's the way it was then.
I got you.
Robert Shelton.
Uh-huh.
I'm finished.
Yeah. You know what, Dad? It's this positive passion that even our young people, going back to our young protesters and people and young people of this generation, I even hear in their conversations now, they love hearing these one-on-one first encounter stories of how it was. They love to be able to, because a lot of them did not hear it from their parents. And I'm talking multiculturally. A lot of it was not spoken about in their homes growing up. A lot of the young white, Hispanic, Asian protesters that are out here now making a noise against this system never heard these stories, never heard this one-on-one of how it really was, of what you and yours were fighting for, and even before you. This is my hope now. This is my positivity, that these young people of all cultures are coming together for now the continuation of this same positive passion and movement of, we got to make a change. Something's got to change. My parents didn't do it. My grandparents. And when they hear stories coming from you and even those before your generation, it solidifies to this young generation that, yeah, this has got to change, because we never heard this before. I'm looking at some of the comments here of the younger posse that's here that are like, this is a positive moment to hear these stories, you know? So Dad, we've got to do this again. We've got to do this
Remember
again.
that song, A Change
Which is going to come.
come.
That's right. Chris Willis did that on the show yesterday.
Shut up, did he really?
Yes,
Oh, Chris, I love that young man. Yeah, change is going to come, Vic. You know, I'm not going to see it. I don't believe I'm going to see it. I think that my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, I don't think my grandchildren are going to see it. I don't think Benjamin, Vic the Third, and Nico and VJ are going to see it. But it's a change is going to come.
It's going to come. And these
you know what your mom says? You know what your mom says? Yeah, if change is going to come is when we look up and say, Lord, this is our God, Jesus comes. That's what mom thinks. She said, it ain't going to happen while we're down here.
Hey, the change is...
That's old school. That's old school.
No, I got you. It's old. And that's what I'm saying, that connection between the generations. The younger needs to hear and feel that passion. And the older needs to hear and feel this younger generation in their fight. You know, and that's the beauty of I'm going to say the conduit of this show, this format, is to bring these bridges together. You know, let's learn from each other. Let's find out where this hope can continue and keep it moving, Dad. And Dad,
proud of you, son. Proud of you and Wendy. Dad, you're making that positively change. And right. I respect you and very proud of you guys putting this together.
Oh, yeah. And Julie, it's Chris, Julie.
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole production.
Is Mom in there somewhere?
Yeah, Mom's sitting right here next to me. She's coaching everything I say.
Oh, okay.
Come over here, baby.
Hey, Mama.
Yeah, Mom's sitting right here next to me. Here she is. Come on down, man. Come on down, baby. That's my girl right there.
I'm cutting up cheese for cheese biscuits.
Come on now. Talk about continuing on. That's it. Oh, Wendy just said hey and sending love. Some of the people, Dad, are asking you to sing as well, your voice. And I know we want to set that up the right way when we come back and have you give more of yourself, Dad. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for being you. I said it in the intro, Dad, that it's a blessing to be called your son. And I
thank you for that.
And I
Thank
know
you,
I
sir.
share
Thank
the
you.
same sentiments with my brother Chris and my sister Julie. Your daughter-in-law Cheryl, she says the same
Yes,
thing.
yes.
And I know with so many people and your grandkids and even your great-grandkids, and a pre-happy anniversary to you and Mom. That's in 2 days, I think.
It is June 23rd. We'll be married, what, 65?
57, I think.
No, I said that. Mom looked at me like, what?
Oh, that was your inside. Like you were like, no, don't talk about the stylistics, because I know you can care about that. But it's like, but everybody, thank you again, everybody who joined in. Trina, Judy Farmer's here. Judy from Longview Heights, and we have
give them all. Hello, everybody. I love you.
David Herbert out in Smithfield, family out there. Thank you all so much. And like I said, we went over today, and Wendy, thank you for staying, but time was not an issue today. It was the love, it was the education, it was the passion, you all, for being here and witnessing and hearing. And young people that I see you lining up here, take this with you. Take this energy with you. Take these stories with you. Let this passion continue to fuel what it is that your message is about. Let it continue to fuel. Hey, if you're angry, be angry. You heard my father in his own. There's still some anger, the passion, some hurt, some bruise there that will, like he mentioned, will probably never go away. But does it mean that hope is gone? That's not what the message was. The message is, I'm giving you my heart. I'm giving you what affected me. I'm giving you what my journey was. And you young people, continue to do it. You heard him say he wished he could be out there with you. I know my father. I've seen him in the days when he was out there. Not afraid of the days when he had his stacked shoes on and his pork chop and his afro and is doing his thing. I remember that. So what we're saying on this episode today, take these words of wisdom with you, y'all. Write those songs. Paint those pictures. You dig? Write those poems like Nikki Giovanni. Give those dance moves like the Alvin Ailey did with his protest and with his artistry, like the comedians of Dick Gregory and so many others who gave their artistry. Give your artistry, young artists. Make your protest heard and make it felt. Once again, I'm going back. Take these words that you heard today and apply it to what you can have as the seeds to grow your protest. Positivity Posse, I love you. And every Saturday and Sunday, we're right here, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or both, depending on how we structure it and who we can get in. And because everybody's got something else to do, but they take their time to come here and join us to give this positivity to you. You know what I always say? With this positivity, take a shower in it, take a bath in it, go scuba diving in the positivity. You know what I mean? If some of y'all may want to skinny dip in the positivity, whatever you do, get in it. And when you come out of it, sprinkle that positivity on everybody that you can. Because that's what we need today. That's what was shared today, the ups, the downs. But in the end, it's hope, it's positivity. Keep on keeping on, y'all. And I'm Victor Brooks from The Victor Brooks Show. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.